Welcome back to Founding Fathers. Today we have three sections that we're going to look at. We're going to look at The Nation Grows, John Adams, the second president, and the Alien and Sedition Acts. And as I keep reading this book, I'm reminded of all the history that I've forgotten, that I've learned. So sometimes it's really valuable to reread concepts and maybe from a different book or perspective. It helps us remember and connect to our reality or our current state. And some things that I've been thinking about is all the things happening today out in the world around me, and wondering how our founding fathers' message resonates today with what's happening, and how important it is for us to see history and what happened with the decisions that were made then, and see if we can't make better decisions in our future. So I want you to think about that and how these tie to maybe some things you know about what's happening in the world around you today, and how we can make good decisions or use their struggles to make our own struggles easier to solve. Okay, with that, the nation grows. How big was the new nation of the United States? Everyone knew there were 13 states, but how many people lived in them? The only way to find out was to count them all. The First Census. On Monday, August 2nd, 1790, a little more than a year after the inauguration of President George Washington, the nation's first census was held, a census that had been held every 10 years since. Marshals visited every household in every state. They gathered information about the head of the family and the number of people living in each household, according to the following descriptions: free white males aged 16 years and upward, free white males aged under 16 years, free white females, all other free persons, and slaves. Native North Americans were not counted in the 1790 census. We're going to come back to this because that just opened my eyes to a lot of concepts that I think are fascinating. New states may be admitted by the Congress into the Union. Constitution Article 4. An image of the New York Harbor teeming with boats in the 1830s. How many people? When all the figures were in, the number of people in the 13 states was found to be just under 4 million. 3,929,214 to be exact. The first census figures for Kentucky, 1790. The census recorded 73,677 people living in the state. So, actually, as I'm reading this, I filled out my census information back end of winter, early spring for my household, which was just including me. And today we include everybody. And what's fascinating to me is that it's free white females in this list here, no age accounting, whereas the males, it was important to know their age, probably for military service. So we can see how times have changed. I'm fascinated because this time with the census, there was a lot of debate about what should and should not be asked on the census, because they collect all different types of information about United States citizens. And some of it was about the status of whether or not you were legally in this country, and they determined that that perhaps would make people feel unsafe. And we use the census to provide services in communities and how to fund different aspects of our communities. So it's very important that we have an accurate count, and we don't want to discourage people because there might be repercussions, or they might be able to be found. So we have a lot of things that happen, but it's interesting. Since 1790, we've had the census every 10 years. Brilliant. The biggest cities in 1790. New York City, New York, 33,131 people. It's over several million these days, people. Philadelphia, 28,522. Boston, Massachusetts, 18,320. Charlottesville, South Carolina, 16,359. Baltimore, Maryland, 13,503. New states admitted to the Union. The Constitution allows for the creation of new states, and on March 4th, 1791, Vermont became the nation's 14th state, followed by a few years later by Kentucky, the 15th in 1792, and Tennessee, the 16th state, in 1796. The 19th century saw the admittance of 29 states, and 5 more were admitted during the 20th century. As each new state joined the Union, the nation grew in size. Western borders were still evolving when this map was made in 1866. So again, for most of us, it's hard to fathom that there was anything less than 50 states. Star-Spangled Banner. Every nation needs a flag, and the first U.S. flag was created in 1776. It had 13 alternating red and white stripes and 13 white stars on a blue background. 1 stripe and 1 star for each of the 13 original states. As new states have been admitted to the Union, the flag has been changed many times. Let's see. So you can see the changing flags here. And I don't know, it's hard to get it in close, I guess. Pretty cool. John Adams, second president. As one of the nation's founding fathers, John Adams helped draft the Declaration of Independence. He was a diplomat, served as President George Washington's vice president, and he became the nation's second president in 1797. Gifted diplomat. Adams was born in 1735 in Braintree, now Quincy, Massachusetts. He became a successful lawyer in Boston, and when Great Britain increased the tax paid by her American colonies, Adams spoke out against it. He was a leading delegate at the First and Second Continental Congress, 1774 and 1775, where he called for America to break away from Britain. During the American Revolutionary War, he was a diplomat in both France and Holland. After the war, he led the American delegation to Paris, where the peace treaty was signed. The most insignificant office. In 1789, Adams became vice president under President George Washington. He was America's first vice president. Adams soon discovered that the vice president had no real power and described the job as the most insignificant office. He found it a frustrating experience, but he did his duty until 1797. That's kind of funny. He's like, I'm not getting to be useful here. What the heck? And diplomat. So he was somebody who was sent out to work with other nations to kind of build peace and to come to consensus or agreement with other places. So clearly he was seen as being somebody who could solve problems effectively through communication, which is valuable in a president, I think. USS Constitution was launched in 1797. She was armed with 44 guns and served with distinction with the U.S. Navy. In the War of 1812, fought against Britain, she captured several British merchant ships and defeated 5 warships. Father of the Navy. After 8 years as vice president, Adams became the nation's second president in 1797. Immediately, he had to deal with an international crisis. Britain and France were at war, and French warships were attacking U.S. ships to prevent them from trading with Britain. President Adams ordered warships to be built, which became the first ships in the U.S. Navy. They sank several French ships until in 1800 Adams brought an end to the conflict. The same year, Adams and his family moved to their new home, the White House, Washington, D.C. He was the first president to live there. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. John Adams describing his idea to celebrate July 4th, Independence Day. And then this stamp is featuring John Adams, and it was issued in 1938. So they were using stamps way back then, and we had warships being built. I think it's fascinating that France helped us in our war for independence, and then we were promptly turning around and shooting down their ships. Abigail Adams, First Lady. She was from 1744 to 1818. Abigail and John Adams were married in 1764. She ran the family farm, brought up their children, one of whom, John Quincy Adams, became the nation's 6th president, and took care of her husband's business affairs. She was interested in politics and held strong opinions on many political issues. For example, she was against slavery, and she believed that everyone had the right to a good education. Final years. Adams hoped to be re-elected as president for a second term, but during the election held in 1800, he was defeated by his rival, Thomas Jefferson. Adams retired to his family farm, where he died in 1826. So, Abigail Adams was a founding female. I guess if we're calling them founding fathers, she'd be a founding mother of our country, in that she allowed her husband to be able to do his work as president, and she ran a farm, and she had strong opinions that she wasn't afraid to share, and she took care of business. Alien and Sedition Acts. In 1798, President Adams' Federalist government passed 4 laws designed to strengthen the security of the new nation. They were called the Alien and Sedition Acts. Although they were popular with most people, they raised questions about how much power the national government should have. First, security crisis. When John Adams became president in 1797, he faced the prospect of a war with France. French ships had attacked U.S. merchant ships, and it looked as if the two nations were heading towards conflict. It was the first security crisis faced by the government, and something had to be done. Dangerous strangers. At the same time as the French attacks on U.S. ships, there was great unrest in France because the French Revolution was in full swing. People lived in fear of losing their lives, and many fled from France to the U.S., where they hoped to start afresh. However, the U.S. government saw a problem with this. What if these political refugees, this is how they would be described today, they weren't described that way then, brought along ideas of starting a similar revolution in America? That would pose a danger to the U.S. government. So we can see a theme in today's society of being fearful of new people coming to our country, regardless of what situation they're trying to escape. King Louis XIV of France being led to the guillotine during the French Revolution. And the guillotine is a machine that, takes people's heads off, so it's not super friendly. Let's see. The text of the Alien Act. It came into law in case the U.S. went to war with France. Clampdown on foreigners. In June and July of 1798, the government passed 3 laws known as the Alien Acts. Alien means foreigner. The new laws gave the U.S. government the following powers: the power to detain a person from an enemy nation, the power to expel a foreign person if the government thought the person was a danger to the U.S., and the power to make it harder for a foreign person to become a U.S. citizen. So way back in 1798, we're sowing the seeds of the challenges we have today with giving people citizenship and fear of new people coming and sharing ideas we don't agree with. Clampdown on the press. Ooh, another theme. In July 1798, the government passed the Sedition Act. Sedition means encouraging people to rebel against the state. It became illegal to publish anything that criticized the government or its president. The Sedition Act was a clampdown on the freedom of the press. That doesn't work with the Bill of Rights. Let's see what happens. Good or bad laws? The Alien and Sedition Acts were precautions. They were security measures designed to protect the government and the people of the United States from threats that could lead to unrest and, worse, a revolution. The new laws were popular among ordinary Americans, but Thomas Jefferson and his supporters in the Republican Party were against them, believing that they gave too much power to the national government. Attack on the president. Soon after the Sedition Acts became law, Matthew Lyon, a politician from Vermont, wrote a newspaper article that attacked President Adams. Not only did Lyon accuse the president of acting like a king, a way of saying he had too much power, but he said that President Adams should be sent to a madhouse. Lyons was put on trial and found guilty of sedition. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison. End of the laws. America and France did not go to war, and in 1800, Jefferson and the Republican Party were elected to power. Over the next 2 years, the Alien and Sedition Acts were abolished. In a short time, they had been in force. Only 1 foreigner was deported, and only 10 people were convicted for sedition. So it was not a law that they deemed necessary, nor did they keep. And I wonder what the arguments and thoughts were at that time as we go through similar issues about citizenship and how to allow refugees to come to our country without being overrun. So those were my sections for today. I hope they gave you some cause for some thinking and analyzing of today's situations. And I will read some new sections another day. All right, happy thinking, you guys. Bye.